they might be the team that pisses me off the most to watch in the league because their defense is just so bad.
What did we learn this weekend? Danny Leroux and I are going to talk about that right now, coming up here on Dunc'd On and Dunc'd On Prime. But first, I want to remind you that you can get 35% off a year of Dunc'd On Prime using the code preseason25. I guess that's a little confusing. It's not preseason 25% off. It's preseason 25 for the year 2025, but you get 35% off. Should I have made it 25, 35? Who knows? But in any event, we got lots to talk about. We watched a ton of games. Danny has watched at least one half of 27 of the teams. I haven't been keeping track, but I've seen a fair amount of all of them. So we're going to talk probably about like 10 or so games that we watched over the weekend in some form or another. So where are we going to start here, Danny, with this weekend's games?
Oh, there's a lot of interesting stuff, but I think we can start in Philadelphia with the Sixers getting their second late comeback win of the season. They did that against the Boston Celtics on League Pass opening night, then did it again against the Hornets on Friday.
Yeah, and Joel Embiid, I regret to say that we weren't really in on the deal in the first game, but he basically is on a 20-minute limit. But the way he's doing it is just doing his normal rotation and then just not playing after that 20 minutes. It's a different approach with what the Magic are doing with Jalen Suggs, where he is starting and closing the game, but only playing 20 minutes. So Joel, bounce back game, 20 points, 7 of 11 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3, admittedly against a team that doesn't know him as well in the Charlotte Hornets. But what did you make of Joel's evening?
The jumper was definitely working, and Embiid's game fits together so much better when that is the case. He was 3 of 6 from 3, but also had a couple of mid-rangers. And so I thought that looked good, but I'm still concerned. And I think that Embiid is generally, I'd say he's moving better than I feared he would at the start of the season. But you see those limitations in a couple of different facets. And I thought particularly in the first half, there were some plays where like he just couldn't react in time defensively. And so like he's skilled enough to be able to do his stuff on offense, and especially in a game like this when the jumper's going in. But the rest of it is still a work in progress.
He vowed to come out more aggressively, and he was going up against a rookie Ryan Kalkbrenner, who actually I thought looked pretty good, all things considered, but is the sort of rookie center that who's slow that Joel has kind of made his plaything in the past. And again, Joel's stats were pretty solid. He was -2, and I think when you're talking about concern level, I'm just not sure how concerned to be, because there definitely is an element, particularly at the beginning of the game, to me, of him just trying to get through it. I think, and not get hurt, and just see how his body is responding. Like he's on this 20-minute limit. Who knows how long that's going to be the case? But the reason he's on that limit is because they're still in the ramp up process for him. And so when it comes to setting screens, I didn't think he was being particularly physical. And I thought there are a lot of plays where he had the angle on you put 2 fouls on Kalkbrenner in the first quarter, where he just kind of had the angle on him and just threw his body into him and just was more comfortable going to the foul line than actually trying to finish the play. Now that's Joel do that sometimes. He had a couple of attacks in his later stints where he actually faced up, hard dribble, got to a hook shot in the lane, one of them that looked pretty good. And he did have the jumper working, 3 of 6 from the outside, and then also hit some mid-rangers too. So certainly he looked like someone who is going to help you on offense. I mean, that it was just he looked more like the guy he looked like in preseason, I would say, than that atrocious start against the Celtics. But do you want to elaborate on what you saw from him defensively? Because I would say that looked the worst. I'm not going to say I'm concerned, because again, I think there's still a ramp up period involved and just a general lack of aggression from trying to survive. But and actually, just put together 5-10 straight games, not including back-to-backs, before he gets to that point. And they are going to try to build him up. But you didn't like what you saw from him defensively?
Oh, I didn't. I think that Embiid and movement even if you're an incredibly intelligent center, movement is an important part of it because you need to get from wherever A is to wherever B is in whatever system that is, whether that's a full drop or you're hedging or whatever else. And it wasn't so much those plays. I think if Embiid knew exactly what to do, he could generally get there on time. But a massive component, especially with modern NBA spacing, of being a big man is reacting and recovering. And I thought that on those plays, like there was one where I believe it was Brandon Miller had a cut before he left the game with a shoulder issue. And like,
It's shoulder soreness. Shoulder soreness. It's
oh, totally fine.
nothing, nothing to worry about. He just, it's like he just was lifting weights or something. It feels a little sore. That's all it was. That's why he was clutched over in the tunnel, just grabbing his shoulder in pain and immediately asked out of the game. That's what it was. It's just a little sore. Just a little sore.
Just a little sore and missed the game the next day. But so I thought that I believe it was a Miller cut and Embiid, like even Embiid has never been the most fleet foot, but he's been more agile than some guys his size before. Like he could have gotten back there and just was 2 steps late, wasn't there to contest it at all. And that's a benefit before Don Barlow messed up his elbow of having another guy who's played center at times in his career, so that you can get some of that there. But so Embiid, he's a giant human being. Like there are certain things that he doesn't have to be able to move well to do, but especially when you consider some of the guys in the perimeter rotation for the Sixers, VJ's helping with this, but they still have guys that that you need to cover for, and he's not as good at covering right now.
No, I agree. And the Hornets, while he was in the game, were 9 of 13 at the rim and got fouled 4 times there. And I thought there were a few times he was in position where he wasn't really able to affect the play that much. It was a very weird game in the first half where just both teams were absolutely shooting lights out from three. And in Embiid's minutes, both teams shot well over 50% from downtown. And then Philly went cold after he was out. And I did think he had a part of that. And the other thing, too, is Tyrese Maxey was going crazy. And, I was kind of thinking, man, if this guy's back to being one of the best shooters in the NBA, what a big deal that is for Philly early on. But then when Embiid was out, he wasn't really able to do nearly as much. And just that quick pitch, handoff game with Joel, it's just so powerful compared to it being a Dembona or Andre Drummond, who got some tick late, as we'll talk about coming in. So, like, he still is just a really powerful offensive force. And, especially when PG comes back, when they have McCain, Edgecombe, we'll talk about his game in a second. But I think, Joel, they have more offensive firepower than they've ever had around him. At least, they had James Harden, but even at that point, James was not like a dominating scorer. Like the Joel as hub model, I think, can work pretty well. So, like, this was encouraging. It wasn't so just for him to get back on track, put up some points. I think was fine for where he's at in this process. It's too early to say. Is he gonna? And he was at one point scoring a point a minute, so that was important. Let's talk about VJ though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. What are you gonna say there first?
No, that's fine. VJ Edgecombe wasn't as dominant a game as he had against the Celtics, where had the modern rookie season opener, career opener game, but I still thought that he had his imprint on it. It's funny that I was first, I'm like, oh man, his shot is looking so much better than in the draft film. Like it's looking smoother, and he made his first 3-pointer, but that Edgecombe missed his other 2. But I still think it looks better than it did, and the thing that is really encouraging for a rookie, I mean, in the early part of his career, is that he's doing all of the other stuff better than I had expected, even a little bit later in his career. So he's pushing hard in transition, and he's doing a little bit more of that with the ball in his hands, which is impressive. But also he's disruptive on defense. And so if you have a guy who is disruptive on defense, who is playing hard and doing the things he does in transition, and has at least a slightly credible jump shot, which is a differentiator at times between him and Stephon Castle last year, who we criticized a lot, that makes a big difference. Like that is somebody that Philly didn't really have in their rotation. It's somebody that can help them with what Tyrese Maxey does when Jared McCain comes back, with what Jared McCain does. And so this wasn't his best performance, but it made me more encouraged because of the other things he did to help the Sixers win.
Yeah, and Philly really can benefit from the way that they're trying to run now, and he's a huge part of that. 15 points, 6 of 15, 5 of 12 from 2. 8 assists was very interesting
Yeah.
to me, and then 3 steals and a block. Now, I think his passing lane defense, his gambling, that stuff, he also had an insane block where I think someone got an offensive rebound on the right baseline, and VJ just skied up to the top of the square to block it in the air out of bounds. It was an incredible block in crunch time. And then, I'm sorry, no, that was in the first half. Excuse me. And then, but yeah, the 8 assists is great, and just the way he runs so hard, and you don't really run that many plays for him. Like, you're not gonna have him create the initial advantage really at all. Like, that's just not necessarily in his skill set yet. Maybe on the second side it could be, but when there is an initial advantage, and sometimes he'll create that advantage by running or cutting or something like that, he's able to finish it obviously because he's a great athlete. But he just is able to generate some shots, and in a way that's encouraging because you sort of wondered where he would fit in. And yeah, I think his 3-pointer is ahead of schedule, and at least, I mean, he only got up 3 in this game as opposed to 13
Whew.
last game. So he's not going to be a guy who's going to be shooting 9 a game. I don't think. Like, that was an aberration that first game. Uh, but especially because Joel was so bad, they needed somebody else to pick up the slack. But I think he, at least because we were like, what position he's going to play? Well, if he shoots as well as he shot so far, it's not going to be a disaster. Especially you're going to have PG. He'll hopefully be an above average shooter. Maxey can be one of the best shooters. Joel gives you some shooting at the 5. Kelly Oubre does not give you any shooting. Dominic Barlow started, but then went out with an elbow laceration. So they are kind of light on shooting. Grimes is a good shooter, though. So I think they have enough to get by with him at the 2. Anything else you want to have on him?
On Edgecombe, no. I wanted to, while we're still talking about Philly, I want to talk a little bit about Quentin Grimes' game. And so Grimes,
Yeah.
a fascination considering he signed his qualifying offer. And Grimes did not start this game, but he did play 30 minutes and close it and had some big buckets late. 24 points in 30 minutes, 7 to 14 from the field. And with guys who signed a qualifying offer, you really wonder, well, where are they going to fit in? They very well could leave as an unrestricted free agent the following offseason. But Philly, especially in this iteration without McCain, they really need Quentin Grimes. I think they need him all the time, but they especially need him now. And they needed somebody with Joel Embiid not closing the game because of the structure of how Nick Nurse is running this rotation. They needed somebody to take and make some of those shots. Tyrese Maxey can generate some of it. Tyrese, by the way, played the entire fourth quarter. He played, was it 42, 43 minutes?
42. Yeah, I mean, he and VJ both played 40 minutes in the first 2 games.
And so Grimes, they needed somebody to help generate those shots, somebody to ideally make those shots. And so they closed it with basically with it was Maxey, Edgecombe, Grimes, Oubre, and then a big, I believe it was Drummond for pretty much that whole stretch. And so they needed somebody who could generate some of those shots, who could make some of that. And so as they're making their comeback to close the game, Quentin Grimes was a huge factor.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the shot that he hit to win the game late, but it was great to see him make that, given some of the contractual crap that he's had to go through. And Maxey, he started off so well. He did get to the foul line a fair amount, but 3 for 11 from 2 is not particularly encouraging, especially against a team that is not some dominating size team. And also, you mentioned Grimes too. He's probably still their best perimeter defender.
Yes.
VJ Edgecombe can make plays, but on the ball, I think his technique is not that great. Like, he had a few times he got blown by. Like, Colin Sexton got him pretty badly one time. Speaking of which, from Charlotte's standpoint, Sexton got the start over Con Knippel. I assume the reason for that was to guard Maxey. What ended up happening, though, was Brandon Miller left after 9 minutes with this shoulder soreness. B, Trey Mann actually was the guy who came in as the defensive stopper on Maxey. I thought he was doing a pretty good job. He was moving his feet while staying in front of him. Maxey did hit one difficult mid-ranger over him right at the end of the game, but Mann was doing a good job getting into him, denying him, and without Joel there to kind of be a hub and change the angles and get Maxey the ball on the move, which is part of what was so effective that in transition in the first half, man actually was surprisingly good. Now, he's uniquely qualified. Well, I didn't think he was qualified to be a defensive stopper on anyone before this game, but he's can get away with guarding Maxey because Maxey is not like some power guy, really, right?
Yeah,
Like, I mean,
they're
man
both
is
thin.
yeah, yeah. I mean, both of them gotten stronger, but that was good to see. Trey didn't really have it on the offensive end, and we'll talk about the end of the game there as well. How about Con Knipple? What did you see from him?
I thought it was all right. I mean, Knipple, he had a better preseason and kind of early run than I had feared after his summer league. And his jumper, you and I both believed in his jumper overall. And he had a couple of good decision plays, but also had 3 turnovers, and some of those were a little bit flawed. So I thought he was okay. I didn't think he was great.
Yeah, he could have hit a three that would have really put Philly into difficulty in the last minute that he missed in the corner. But he was 3 of 6 from downtown. Had 3 turnovers, as you mentioned, but 14 points in 30 minutes, and he was pressing a service closing the game, even though I don't know if that's what they would have wanted to do beforehand against these quick guards. But he certainly had a big target on his back. He was getting called up a lot. Guys were trying to ice, if like the likes of Quentin Grimes, for example, would see Knipple on him. He was just like, all right, I'm going to, like, everybody clear out. I'm going to go at him. Wonder what it is about Knipple that people think they can do that against him. But no, he does move his feet pretty well. This is part of my concern is about guys like getting to a spot and shooting over him because he's not the quickest off the ground. He doesn't have the longest arms. But I thought, again, he moved his feet pretty well. He is pretty strong. I like the way that he attacks when he does have a seam on the offensive end. So to me, he's based on my pre-draft scout and what I saw in summer league, it's all pretty much queuing to what I thought he was going to be, which is a pretty good player so far. And then their other rookie is Ryan Kalkbrenner, and Ryan Kalkbrenner is looking like he might be a decent bet to be right up there among the league leaders in field goal percentage early. He started, I think he was 5 of 5 against the Nets in the first. I haven't seen what he did in their most recent game, but he was 7 of 7 in this game. And he is definitely a presence on the defensive end, taking up space. He's slow, right? I mean, especially with Joel at the height of his powers, he probably couldn't guard him. But I thought it was pretty interesting that Mason Plumlee really not in the rotation. He played 5 minutes, and it was essentially only to match up with Joel because I think they know that Musa Diabate is foul prone, and he had 6 fouls in 17 minutes in this game without playing against Joel. Really, Musa also was 2 of 7 from the foul line, which was not great. But like Kalkbrenner is actually he's a real player, and
Yes.
he's a yeah. Elaborate.
No, he's credible. I mean, like Kalkbrenner, he's big. He's not fast, but he moves his feet reasonable. I think he sees the game well too. I was something I really was impressed by Kalkbrenner in summer league, and was highly regarded for his peers defensive player in college. And by the way, Kalkbrenner at Creighton, Kalkbrenner comparatively paltry 2 of 3 in their blowout win over the Wizards on Sunday. So he has missed 2 shots in his 3 NBA regular season games. But yeah, I think Kalkbrenner, what was so intriguing, taken, was it, 34th in the draft, is that he's to me, he's at least a credible backup center right now. And like, there are a lot of players who take some time to get there. Centers, they don't need as much time to figure it out as point guards do, but oftentimes they do that. And I think Kalkbrenner, he knows where to be. He does that. And the Hornets, have him outstripped by playing, starting center on this group. But I mean, Diabate, the same thing. Diabate is generally, I'd say he's too small to be a backup center, other than the just force.
Well, he's too small to be a starter. I think he's fine as a
backup. It can work, but he's too small to move beyond that. But I like Diabate. It's just that he has some limitations. And so they're kind of pushing everybody a little bit beyond. But I mean, I think Kalkbrenner is doing a better job than I feared going against some of the starters. But I like him. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I mean, just his composed finishing. He sets good screens. I mean, he's not, going to catch the ball on the move coming down the lane, but he also is just a big target underneath. He can get some offensive rebounds. He had 4 offensive rebounds in this game. And if you throw it to him down there, he's just got such a big standing reach. Like he actually is able to catch and finish at the NBA level and then also take up some space defensively. So seeing the way that he's played so far, and obviously he has to keep it up, but I feel much more comfortable with their decision not to do more at the center position than I did. That he's going to actually start and give them like semi credible play. They're 2-1, and he's
Yeah.
played pretty well in these games. So, and then Sion James too. I've been impressed by him. I kind of didn't get it with him after summer league, and I saw a little bit of him in Duke film as we were watching some of the other guys, and his 3-point attempt rate was exceedingly low there. But and he also is not, like 6'3", 6'4". He's built like a tank, but he's pretty small. But he could just move his feet defensively. Like he's strong. He can guard. He's their best perimeter defender already on this team, I would say. And that's we'll see when Josh Green goes. I think he's actually probably better than Josh Green, honestly. And he'll kind of fight inside, get some rebounds. Like he had 10 points in
Yeah.
19 minutes. So he's not just a totally useless offensive player, Trenton Hassel style.
He
I'm
also
dating
took it.
myself
He
with that
also
reference.
took and made a floater, which surprised me.
Yeah. So he and he's, I think, at least a decent weapon on the corner three, if not necessarily an arc three. So yeah, like what I saw from him as well, and I think he's someone who even is a credible rotation player from what we've seen. Again, this is our Bayesian prior is based on 2-3 games here. Obviously, if he's shooting 21% from three a month from now, then we will revise. But this is just, we're making our best conclusion that we can right now on some of these rookies and coming up with that. So, how about the game of one LaMelo Ball?
I thought that my biggest criticism of Ball in this game, and I didn't watch their blowout win over the Wizards. Maybe it was a little different there. Was that the transition stuff? He can find buys. He could get that. He had 8 assists. Is that he doesn't stress out the defense enough in the half court, and that's been a criticism of LaMelo overall. But made 4 of 11 from three, got to the line 8 times. I I thought he was a reasonably good version of himself. It's just this idea of like, what is I always have to grapple with this with LaMelo, which is like, what is he on a different team? And I still don't know exactly what that is. But I thought he would have been the best player in a Hornets win if they had actually held on.
Yeah, well, he was part of why they lost in the end,
True.
as we'll get to. But yeah, I think so. He had 8 free throw attempts. I believe all 4 of his fouls were, yes, I have it right here. Were all 4 of his fouls were non-shooting fouls drawn in the bonus when he was attacking off the dribble and a guy put a hand on him and he sort of like stopped and threw up a shot. It was technically a non-shooting foul, but he was able to get to the line. So I thought he attacked a little bit more there. You kind of lose that a little bit in seeing that he was only 4-7 from 2. And it was an efficient night for him, right? With 27 points, and he did it on only 22 shooting possessions. That's better than what we've seen from him. And he was 4 of 11 from three, had 8 assists and 3 steals. And he was leading their offense. He played 34 minutes. I think Miles Bridges, people are talking about him being in better shape. I didn't really see a ton from him in this one. He was 3 of 9 from both 2 and 3. And Colin Sexton is good for them to have too. Like he at least can attack off the dribble. He'll make some threes if he's open. Like just to have a scorer out there who actually has like above league average true shooting percentage on occasion is a big deal for this team. That just was one of the things that I talked about with Brian, is that they're just, could you trust to actually score efficiently for their position? And Sexton is one of those guys. So hopefully we'll find out that Miller is okay. I certainly don't trust the Charlotte Hornets injury reporting, as just there's a spotlight on this stuff due to the gambling. And every time this happens now, especially because of that, I'm going to take this more seriously. I always try to point out when a team is just totally BSing on injuries. And that's clearly what they're doing here. The end of the game, with Charlotte up 1, LaMelo gets one of those non-shooting fouls off his move going right against Quentin Grimes. Clear foul. Only makes 1 out of 2. So 2-point Charlotte lead. Then Maxey hits that tough pull up from the right elbow over man. It's a pretty good contest. Then Khan misses a three off a great offense. It was actually a nice pass from Kalkbrenner underneath to find him in the corner. Trey Mann gets the rebound, and they kind of move it around to LaMelo. Yeah, it was maybe 7 on the shot clock. LaMelo half-heartedly dribbles back and forth and then goes to a 31-foot, one-leg step back fadeaway over VJ. That's not even close. Just never tried to attack, never tried to do anything, and still took that shot with 4 on the clock. So that was kind of a killer. That was bad, LaMelo. What did you think of how it played out on the other end of the floor, leading to Grimes's 3?
Well, so one of the many plays where the Sixers started going after Con Knipple, and and Trey Mann kind of helps out there, but the ball eventually finds its way
Yeah,
to
they called up Knipple and gave up the switch immediately to get Maxey onto him.
yeah, and that's well. So would you have fought that harder? Is that what you would have done?
Yeah, I just didn't like the way they played. It was after a no timeout. Game is tied, but yeah, I didn't think Quentin Grimes. You want to shoot on the move, and you just look at what Grimes' shot would have been if, say, you threw it to him on the move versus what the shot ended up being. Because what the shot ended up being was, oh, we got Knipple on Maxey, but now we're sort of going to double, sort of not. Trey Mann is in the gap, and very good pass by Maxey to find Grimes on the right wing, and LaMelo Ball is guarding VJ Edgecombe in the right corner. And LaMelo is just standing straight up. Now, maybe he was tired at this point after the shot that he took on the other end would indicate maybe he's tired, but he's standing straight up. And then, the pass goes to Grimes. Now, first I have to get into a stance. Then I will try to stunt at Grimes. Doesn't really work. He tries to get back to VJ in the corner because you don't want to leave him wide open in the corner or on a cut or something. But if he's in more of a stance, then maybe he can actually get there and affect Grimes briefly so that Trey Mann could have gotten back. So I just didn't love the strategy from Charlotte. I didn't love the execution by Mann because he was sort of helping without helping. And then LaMelo wasn't there with the rotation, and that left Quentin Grimes wide open to bang a 3, and that was the winning points. Although Mann had a great look at a 3 on the other end with Andre Drummond, who played pretty well. He had 6 offensive rebounds. He's plus 12. Just guarding Kalkbrenner and just retreated into the lane when they're up 3 with 10 seconds left. It was just insane. And so Kalkbrenner just screens for Trey Mann. He's wide open for a 3 off the dribble. Andre Drummond is like, oh, wait a minute. I better get out there. Not even close. But it was good to see Quentin Grimes after all the contractual stuff hit that 3, get mobbed by his teammates. And, because I never got the impression that, he didn't want to be in Philly. He said that. It just, because of the aprons and their situation, they just weren't able to give him the contract that I think he deserves, frankly. And so we'll see whether he's able to prove it that he deserves it again or end up going somewhere else. But so nice win for Philly. They're 2-0, 2 clutch wins. They also had to come back again from a big deficit in this one. But their team's about to change with more Joel, with PG presumably coming back relatively quickly here. But I think they clearly, the talent that's out there can do some stuff. And I'm with the East looking like shit so far, charitably, an opportunity is there for Philly. It really is. It's not going to be smooth for them reintegrating all these guys, new guys, old guys. But it's this is to get these 2 wins with Joel kind of ramping up, no PG, that's actually going to matter.
So I think where we should go from here is
well, did you actually, since we're talking about the East looking bad, did you want to just talk about the overall state of the league real quick before we continue?
Sure. Something that I found really interesting, and I was thinking about this while watching the close of the West Coast games on Sunday night, was that most teams have played 3 games, some have played 2 into the season. So not that far. There are only 4 undefeated teams left, and there are only 5 winless teams. So there's a lot in the middle right now. Now there's some surprising losses and some surprising wins in there. So, but it's just, I guess you could say that's parity. Well, I don't think there's necessarily going to be parity at the end, but there's some parity in the beginning.
Yeah, and your undefeated teams are Chicago and Philly, both 2-0, San Antonio 3-0, but their schedule has been atrocious and it's going to continue to be for a while. And then OKC, although they had to go to double overtime in their first two games to get there. So if you just look at, uh, and there are a lot of guys injured, like Anthony Edwards at a hamstring. We'll get into some of the news more later, but it doesn't feel like there are any teams right now, because even OKC has guys out too. We're just like, oh man, like these guys are dominating. They're firing on all cylinders. Um, so we'll have to check back in on that. But I think it's OKC, I'm sure, is going to come on and they're going to be awesome. But other than that, there doesn't seem to be a team that I'm just like they're just going to go out and kill people every night. Like Golden State, I think their fastball is pretty good, but then they're just too old to maintain it, as we saw on the back to back in Portland. Like they're just not going to compete on a lot of these type of nights. So, and there are a lot of hungry young teams that are going to be a huge pain in the ass to play on the second night
Mhm.
of back to back. Okay, so yeah, let's get to where we're gonna go next. Orlando, Atlanta.
Yeah, I think we go to
Speaking
Orlando.
speaking of the East looking bad.
Sure. And I had been really excited to see the Hawks, and they got dismantled so quickly by the Raptors that I ended up not focusing on that game and went to other stuff instead on League Pass opening night. And so that put more for me on Hawks Magic. And I thought that it was a pretty fascinating game. So I focused on the second half. And what what struck me, so the Magic came into that the third quarter with a lead. And I thought that for the most part in the third quarter, the Hawks outplayed the Magic, but it was basically nip and tuck in terms of the single quarter that whole time. And then they start to go on a run towards the end of that. They have a run that eventually the Magic come back. And then eventually the Hawks get the comeback actually happens in the fourth quarter. They have a big run. We'll talk about that. But I thought that for me, so that just kind of sets the table of what happened in the game. The thing that stuck with me the most, and I don't like to fixate on the negative, that we have to do it at times, but I was so disappointed in Paolo Banchero and the shots that he took and the dominance that he didn't have overall in the game. For me, the big stat overall for Paolo was he took he 7 shots in restricted area, was 4 of 7, which actually you'd love for him to be a little bit better there. But he was 0 for 8 everywhere else. That means he took more shots outside of the restricted area than he had plenty of jumpers in there.
Yeah,
And
which you're probably gonna do.
yeah,
I that's asking a lot to take more than half of your
yeah.
shots in
But
the
yeah,
restricted area. But yeah, he was 0 for 8 on jumpers. Not
over 8 on
not
jumpers. Yeah, and it's not like he took a lot of upper paint shots. Like they were the ones that weren't around the basket were were jumpers and only 5 free throw attempts. And so for me, there were a lot of settles. There was a wild shot late, but like it started out at the very beginning of the third quarter. Like they basically went into a drop on Paolo, and he's like, "Okay, I'm just going to take this 3 pointer. Not going to challenge the defense. Not going to eat up the space." And when you consider with Kristaps Porzingis didn't play in this game due to illness, and so that meant it was a Kongwu, and they had Asa Newell played a little bit, and a couple, and Muhammad Gay, who I thought did very well. Like the Hawks had an underbelly that a strong team could have attacked, and we just didn't see enough of that from Banchero. Some from Franz Wagner, who I think had a good game. Like that's not to say he had a bad game. That's just not necessarily what he was doing. And so I was just disappointed with Paolo in particular, like his approach and his attack.
Yeah, I feel that. I mean, Franz was definitely more the guy who was attacking the basket, and I do now Paolo is generally like Franz benefits some from Paolo, right? Like Franz is going to be guarded by a guy who's probably not going to be able to handle him physically, whereas Paolo is being guarded by Jalen Johnson, who is
Right.
one of the few guys who can match up with him pretty well. And they got Desmond Bain too, and they're trying to work him in. And then it's Jalen Suggs, who I thought was looked pretty good in this game. We talk more about, but he's kind of playing part of these minutes, and then he goes out after 3 minutes. Like it's really hard to get into a rhythm. So I agree with you on Paulo, but I think it's a greater symptom. I'll take you guys through my process now. A lot of times, what I will do, particularly if I'm watching a game back on film later, is I will just put headphones in and then record voice notes to myself as I'm watching, so I don't have to stop watching and go into another document and type and then go back to it. And so I'm looking at my notes right now, and I have this. I'll read it to you verbatim. 3 1,000, 4 1,000, 5 1,000. And that count is the Magic going from one action to another in their
Yeah.
offense. It's so fucking slow in the half court. Now, they actually attacked pretty well in transition, not effectively, but they ran hard. They forced some turnovers. They had a bunch of turnovers themselves as well, even more. I mean, that's the other thing that's concerning about the Magic offense early. They had 22 turnovers in this game. And that some of them happened in transition, and yeah, they're still learning each other, and Suggs has been in and out with the group. So you have excuses. But every single time they're not in a fast break situation, even sometimes when they are off of a miss, it just takes them so long to get to the next thing. And one guy will bring it up. All right, now the center has to jog out there. Oh no, we're gonna throw it to the other slot. If you're lucky, maybe they'll run a pick and roll on one side and throw it to the other slot and then run a pick and roll. But even that second, the whole point of doing that is, yeah, we're gonna tilt the defense to one side, and then we're gonna move it to the other side, and we'll catch them napping because we just moved the ball. But when they move it to the other side, it's okay, who's supposed to set the screen again? I'm going to point to you. Is it the guy Trae Young's right? No, is it the center? Who's okay? Now you run up there, and it just takes them every single. I just watch the Magic play. Hopefully, it'll get better. But in these two games against the Bulls, where the Bulls they were, we'll talk more about that game in a second. Their half court offense was just miserable statistically. But yeah, okay. Every once in a while, they'll move the ball. It'll be semi-transition, or they'll draw on a double team or something. When a guy doesn't have someone in front of him, yeah, they'll attack. But if the guy does have someone in front of him, like they don't even move it to the next guy. They just wait and they wait and they wait for the guy to come and set the screen, and it just takes 4 seconds before they start doing something when a guy catches the ball with someone in front of them. Like they're the anti-pacers. And no one ever like runs through quickly or slips. It's just they're waiting for there's only one thing on the menu, and we have to wait for it to get cooked before we can start our play. And so that just leads to every single time 10 on the shot clock, 11 on the shot clock before anyone starts dribbling towards the basket. And it's always dribbling too, by the way. It's not passing. There's not much diversity in terms of bringing Desmond Bane off of screens, or hey, maybe you could bring Desmond Bane out and like try to slip to the rim and get a dunk or something. Like there's just the amount of ball movement is truly terrible. And I mean, I haven't looked at the number of passes that they had in this game, but it's just so, when I say station to station offensively, like this is what I mean. It's, this is what Tom Thibodeau got fired for, but it's like 5 times worse than that. Because at least like Brunson is also really good as a pounder. Like that's the other thing. Like they don't have like good pounders on this team. So I mean, this has been a long rant, and no, Nate will. What is the phrase that like no one half the same rage as a woman scorned, right? Like that's kind of what it is when I think a team's going to be good and then they suck and it's like controllable stuff. I'm going to be more focused in on that. But
I believe the
yeah,
phrase is "Hell hath no fury," but
yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm.
um,
It's been a long weekend,
but you know what has a
so
lot more fury? The Orlando Magic are so this is using clean the glass stats, which I'm not sure if they've updated with Sunday's games, all of Sunday's games. They are 30th in offensive rating, and they are 30th in half court, first shot half court point per play. And they have earned both of those so far.
yeah. Well, since we're on the Magic, we can also. I want to get back to the Hawks, but we can also talk about their game against the Bulls that you watched, just to give you the stats on that Bulls game. I tweeted about it. They were, I think it was 0.59 points per play in the half court in that game.
Yes, that's correct. Real bad.
Yeah, what'd you see in that one?
I mean, it was another. I mean, the offensive process we already talked about. but it doesn't help when you go 3 of 24 from 3. The Kia curse now that the arena name has changed a couple of years ago. You and I are
Yeah,
always
can we
bad at
go
them.
alliteration there? Is it like a curse with a K?
Yes, it is a curse with the K. I was actually thinking
Okay.
about that. So that's going to make a lot of things look significantly worse. And the other thing that made it look worse for me was no Jalen Suggs. Suggs, because he's not, they're being very cautious. He's playing 20 minutes a game. He's not playing in back to backs. And so that meant that Tyus Jones started in his stead. And so it's just all of that's a little bit harder. They don't have Mo Wagner because he's still recovering from torn ACL to kind of help give them some
I think
offense.
Mo Wagner now it's asking a lot. Like the old Mo Wagner before he got hurt could really help these guys, right? Like
I agree.
he because he actually is more of a threat on the roll. He's gives you some movement in the half court. He generates these high percentage shots, just screening, rolling, slipping around, taking a couple of dribbles on the move after he slipped the pick, like that kind of stuff. They just don't, Batadze and Wendell Carter just don't do any of that stuff.
Yeah, the thing that Wendell Carter did well was sort of in the Hawks game was that he got fouled a ton in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
Carter
he's
took
been pretty good in the clutch on the offensive glass.
yeah, he was disruptive there, but he missed a couple of those free throws. He was 6 of
Yeah,
11
he
from the
also
line.
just completely dropped a Jalen Suggs pass out of bounds.
Oh, that would have tied
I
the game.
hate, by the way, like the NBA scorers need to get better at assigning turnovers to players who drop passes. Like that was deemed a bad pass turnover by Jalen Suggs out of bounds, and it's like he hit him right in the hand directly under the basket with nobody around him, and it should have been a dunk. Like that's Wendell Carter's turnover.
Yeah, it's who was at fault is kind of the way that it showed, and the fault is not always with the passer. Many times it is with the person who's catching. And so yeah, I didn't have a ton from Bulls Magic. I actually had more on Hawks Magic, and I thought there was a lot of really positive from Atlanta's perspective. And I think the place I want to start with that is Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and he had this rough first game. You see that a lot with a player with a new team. He was aggressive, taking a shot, and Walker, he had a really nice stretch where he was in the third quarter, was playing pretty composed, wasn't making a lot of mistakes out there, was credited with 4 assists and 1 turnover, but was taking some shots within flow. He was 7 of 8 on twos. So the 1 of 10 from threes is obviously bad, but you expect that, you can law large numbers, all that type of stuff over the course of the season. Now I thought that Alexander Walker, he gave them something, and it was important that Alexander Walker gave them something, because without Zachary Risachet and without Kristaps Porzingis, you need a little bit of everybody else stepping up, and I thought he did enough of that for them.
Yeah, I thought he was pretty good defensively for them, as well as a quiet game for Jalen Johnson, particularly with the 5 personal fouls, limiting him to 26 minutes. So that's actually how Muhammad Gay got into things with 13 points. And he's also just a really active defender as well. He's pretty decent on the ball, but he just is and he's long. He really is like true power forward size with maybe almost center length, but he's able to get in the pass. He actually reminded me a little bit of a guy on the other side of the floor who just isn't playing at all right now. Interestingly, Jonathan Isaac. And did Isaac play in their next game? Is he
I
like
thought
not doing the back to
I
back
thought
thing
he played. I
also?
thought he played like 6. Was it like? I thought I saw him briefly.
Very limited minutes in all the games, I think.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I thought he had like
yeah, I mean it's basically just been Carter and Batadze playing center,
yeah.
and
He played
then
6 minutes against the Bulls.
yeah, and I think like Tristan Da Silva is also taking some of his. Da Silva's look pretty good, but back to Atlanta. Yeah, to me, my big takeaway was that Trae Young actually did look pretty good,
Yes.
and I know he didn't have a great opening game, but I think they looked bad against the Raptors. The Raptors haven't looked great since then themselves. It's just it's always a reminder that you can the Clippers just got totally blown out with the Jazz. I actually watched that first quarter. We can talk about it, but they've righted the ship since then. But Trae, I thought he looked quick. He was able to get by guys. He drew 10 fouls, 5 non-shooting. He's another guy who's just awesome at getting non-shooting fouls when they're in the bonus. And only had 6 assists, but he was setting guys up for dunks. I thought the Magic defense, particularly in the third quarter when the Hawks were struggling to hit threes, just was not very connected And I think Atlanta is doing a good job of moving the ball quickly. They're not getting up that many threes, right? Like they got up 29. The Magic really concentrate on not giving up threes, which I think that worked great against the Boston Celtics in the playoffs last year. But I think against this team, without Porzingis, you should be concentrating more on taking away Trae Young's passes into the paint
Yeah.
and deal with more threes being taken. But I thought the Magic just had a few times where they didn't switch. Jalen Suggs actually had some uncharacteristic mistakes at the start of the third where he just couldn't get over the screen, or then they switched and he didn't veer, and they gave up a run to the rim for the center. But Trae, to me, he really dominated the last bit of this game. And while I would posit that the Magic lost this during the Keaton Wallace minutes when they had no Jalen Johnson due to foul trouble and no Trae at the start of the fourth, and the Hawks won those minutes by 5. Yeah, let me double check that here. So Trae and Jalen off. Yeah, they outscored him 12-9 in 5 minutes there. So that was mostly at the start of the fourth, and that's where I thought Orlando was up 10 at the start of that run. But yeah, that I was encouraged by what I saw from Trae. Even going up against a great defender in Suggs.
Yeah, my favorite
Anything else? Yeah.
Yes, my favorite Trae Young play was it was late. He had so Trae Young can pass guys open in a way that very few other NBA players can, and so
Yeah.
he finds Dyson Daniels under the basket, like pass that we obviously have a different angle from the TV cameras, something out of nothing, and the Magic reacted to Daniels, and so it eventually became an Onyeka Okongwu three, another play where Trae Young created the advantage with the pass, didn't get credit for an assist, though the 3 points were there. And yeah, for me, it was that the Keaton Wallace, that stretch, but then was also, there was a 15-0 Hawks run. It eventually got to, like, I don't know, 24-7 or something like that, depending. But that was bridged the Keaton Wallace to when Trae came back in. And I thought that was a really important stretch for the Hawks. They were generating good shots. They had some feedback loops because they got a couple stops, then did stuff in transition. And so I was really pleased with how good the Hawks looked, especially in that stretch. And then we brought up how Muhammad Gay did well. Asa Newell only played 4 minutes. I thought he looked pretty good in those 4 minutes, but I don't know if you caught it. It ended up getting, I saw it and then I was happy it got clipped to Reddit. There was a very funny play where, so Asa Newell gets the ball in the corner. Wendell Carter doesn't really contest it and says, you can hear it on the broadcast, says, hell no. And
Oh
then
yeah. No, I
Asa
remember that.
Newell lets go of the ball, and before it goes in, he says, hell yeah. And then it goes in. That's his first NBA basket. And I was like, that's fantastic. And I liked Asa Newell. I thought he was interesting as a prospect. And so to have that be his first NBA bucket was pretty cool. And so I thought they got enough contributions. I still wonder what Luke Kennard's deal is. Like, there was this point early in his Pistons career where like, oh, maybe he can handle the ball a little bit, do some offense. He did have a couple of assists,
That's
but
kind of what they brought him in to do. It seemed like Quinn
yeah.
Snyder has talked about that. He's like, he's a connector. It's like, well, how about you connect your feet to the outside of the 3-point line and take a three, because he took 0 threes in 23 minutes. Again, the Magic are good at reducing threes, but for Kennard to take no threes, Dyson Daniels to take no threes, Jalen Johnson to take no threes. Like that's, Kennard's out there to shoot threes, but then for two of your starters at the 2 and the 5, or I guess the 3 and the 3 and the 4 here, with Alexander Walker, who's probably the 2 playing next to Daniels, to take no threes. That's tough. And Alexander Walker took 10. Maybe the Magic were cool with that, but so Trae looked pretty good. The Hawks got destroyed on the second night of this back-to-back by OKC, who's pretty shorthanded. Although OKC is OKC still, but so and then also this Porzingis thing is a little discouraging to me. Flu-like symptoms. Now he's missed 2 games. He's questionable for the next game. Well, that sounds suspiciously like it might be the syndrome that he has, and they're calling it something else. Not that any NBA team would ever remotely obfuscate. Not that his agent would want them to call it flu-like symptoms when he is eligible for a contract extension. No, surely everything totally above board. He's just got a sniffly nose that's had him out probably for 3 games now. And we'll see. I hope I'm wrong about that, but that's it raised my eyebrows.
So,
And
do you
they
have any?
need him. Yeah.
Oh yeah, desperately. Do you have anything more in this game?
I
Oh,
do a little bit, and that
okay.
is that Jalen Suggs. My concern about him is always that he's going to get hurt again. But right now, he looks like he's shot out of a cannon. He's
Oh,
actually gives them a little bit of pace in the half court, like I was whining about earlier.
well,
If
and he
there's a
had
loose
that.
Ball, he's going to fucking get it.
There was that
He had
play, like the
yeah.
best thing that happened to the Magic in crunch time this game. A lot went poorly for them. Was that it was a loose ball. He's just shot out of a cannon, creates what is a 2-on-1 against Paolo, a dunk, one of the few baskets that Paolo made in the second half.
Yeah, so it's tied at a buck 5. Trey blows by Suggs and gets a floater over Franz Wagner, which that's what I wanted to see from Trey. And then when Suggs just blows right by Trey Young, I mean that's the other thing that'd be interesting too is if Suggs because he showed growth as a scorer last year before he went down, and I still think his shooting he was aggressive from 3. He was 3 of 4 from 3. Rest of team 6 of 30. Uh, But if you've got Suggs who can actually do something with the ball, right? Like he can go right by Trey Young the way he's looking, like he's just looking really good physically. Suggs, Bane, Franz, Paulo as your 1 through 4. Like there's gonna be a weak link that you can attack. I think they're way too obsessed with finding that weak link and attacking him. Like it would just if you just moved the ball more and attack the weak link that way instead of
More
okay,
like the
well,
Celtics do.
let's find Trey Young, let's call him up. Oh, they pre-switched it. Okay, let's call up the next guy. And oh, well, hey, what do you know? It's 8 on the shot clock, right? Like if they were just moving the ball more and guys just are comfortable quickly interacting with one another, slipping out of stuff, popping out to the 3-point line, which Suggs and Bane can both do. Like if they just had a little more movement, I think they never cause any confusion for the defense whatsoever. And I would like to say they have more talent. Like they're just not using Bane as a shooter at all. It's just
Yeah.
really
Um,
now some of their lineups, then they throw Black out there and Bitadze and Tristan Da Silva. It gets a little worse. Tyus
so
Jones also is having a rough start to the season.
So Jalen Suggs makes that layup past Onyeka Okongwu with 38 seconds left. And the Hawks, you think, okay, 38 seconds left. If you can swing it, that's a great. You try to see if you can get the 2-for-1 because if you
Yeah,
get
they
two
only had
bites at the
one
apple,
timeout, so they
only
couldn't
had one
go
time,
for
didn't want to use
they
it.
couldn't advance the ball for that.
Yeah, and so it takes a little longer, but eventually Trey Young gets Wendell Carter Jr. on him, and Trey Young draws the foul, gets 2 free throws, makes the 2 free throws with 21 seconds left. And so it's a 2-point game. That means you don't have to deal with the Joe Mazzulla fouling up 3 or anything like that. I was dumbfounded by the Magic possession. And so the thing that some people probably fixate on is Paolo Banchero just chucking a 3 with 11 seconds left, and that was bad.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I was fixated on that.
but
That
before
was
that,
horrible.
but it was horrible. But before that, they didn't get the ball inside the 3-point line in 10 seconds. This is you're down 2 with 21 seconds to go. They didn't run a screen and get downhill. It was just like Franz drives to get past this guy. Can't do it. Okay, I'll
Yeah,
pass to the next guy.
they ran like a little screen away to bring Bane to the top, and the Hawks did defend that well. Like I'm fine
They
with
sniffed that
running
out.
the initial play for a 3 for your best shooter. It was just at that point then that Paulo decided that he needed to take a wild 3 going to his right with 12 seconds left. They had plenty of time still. And like you can still get a 2 in that instance as well. Like why you felt like they had to get a 3, I just didn't
It was
understand.
horrible.
Especially because like we've been talking about, it's so easy to get a 2 now in this circumstance because everyone's so freaked out about giving up a 3 when they're up 2. So, like, if you don't have it initially, you should be able. And again, because everything is so slow, there's only one action. They don't know what to do when, like, the first thing doesn't work. Then they're just kind of stuck, right? Like, where it's like, oh, they took away the 3. Now we can immediately compensate by attacking and going for a 2. Like, they can't process it quickly enough. Um, So yeah, I mean, if this continues, I've talked about this that if the Magic offense continues to be this bad all season, and they are bottom 10, like there's going to be a reckoning. It might be Jamal Mosley, It may just be that Paolo Banchero is not the brilliant tactician we thought he was, whatever it is. But I think there's going to be, and maybe Suggs playing more minutes, but that's not. He's going to play 25 minutes a game and not play back to backs all season. Like I think that's what it's going to be. Because I mean, he's kind of very Caruso like in his style. Did you have anything else on Orlando, Chicago? I know the Bulls fans would probably love us to
Well,
talk
so
more about Chicago.
what I want to the Bulls game that I actually want to talk about a little bit is I went back and watched their League Pass opening night, the win over the Pistons, and
Mm,
because you games get lost in the shuffle. There were 12 games that night, and I thought that there were a couple things that I did really like from Chicago. They were hitting a lot of threes, and I don't know that that's going to be the case every time, but they were working hard. I think that Trey Jones fills an important part of the rotation as kind of an adult in the room who doesn't make a lot of mistakes and who can generate that, especially when Kobe White is
yeah,
unavailable.
he's made up for the loss of Kobe White pretty well, which has been important.
That's been really important, and Buzelis, Modest Buzelis looks more comfortable with his jumper. I still don't think it's all the way there, but I mean, encouraging signs. As somebody who that was the big holdup for me in terms of embracing him as a prospect, I'm feeling better about that than I was when we evaluated him. So that's good for them. But my biggest takeaway from that game wasn't the Bulls, and there's plenty. We talked about some of the Bulls stuff already. Is I think, and it's funny because they lost this game, they've won since. Um, I I noticed it even in this one that Cade Cunningham was really taking another step forward as a creator, as an
Mm.
offensive force, and his passes were more incisive. His dribbles were more they were more incisive, I guess you could say. Like he was getting better penetration, and the Pistons are going to need that, especially with some of the guys that they have out, and they still have some limited spacing. They don't have Malik Beasley, but it's it was kind of getting in the weeds, and like I mean the Bulls beat the Pistons in this game, but it's like I saw more from Cade than I saw last year, and I mean he was an All NBA player last year.
Yeah, he just looks a little bit tighter, a little bit stronger, a little bit more physical at the point of attack. So I agree. I've liked what I've seen from him. I mean, going up against the Rockets and the Thompson Twin Bowl, he looked pretty good on Friday as well. So yeah, that was encouraging. And yeah, we'll lock in on the Bulls pretty soon. Although surely, what always happens is like any surprise team or any really disappointing team, when we watch them, they immediately do the exact opposite of what they've been doing. But obviously for the Magic, it's disappointing to be so terrible offensively in the half court against a team that just doesn't have much in the way of rim production. Uh, Detroit also beat Boston at home in their home opener after beating Houston in Houston's home opener earlier on. And that game, and we can talk about a little from Boston's perspective too, but the big thing for Detroit was that they had 4 offensive rebounds and 8 second chance points in the last 5 minutes of the game, and Asar Thompson had 3 of those. Amen has had a few more injuries, and Asar, I think he had nothing to do but lift weights probably when he had this lung issue. But he actually, it looks more athletic than Amen. Now, part of that is that Amen is now more in this ball handling role, that they're giving Asar some more on ball reps, but Asar is still kind of playing more of that baseline role. He and Ron Holland together look pretty good as well, forcing turnovers. But that was really, I mean, the Celtics, it's fascinating, Danny. Like we've seen such a shift now. And again, a big part of how they're missing Jason Tatum is on defense too. But the Celtics just can't get a defensive rebound. That's killed them in all 3 of their losses.
Yeah, it's been a huge part of the story overall for the Celtics so far, and that was you talked about it being central to the ending of their loss to the Pistons, and that always looms a little bit large for everyone. And the Celtics, they have this really weak, big rotation overall, and especially for grouping it power forwards and centers together. I mean, in the game against the Pistons, they started Queta, Brown, Hugo Gonzalez, Derek White, and Peyton Pritchard. Like that is Gonzalez. He's intriguing at times, but he's 6'6" maybe, and like not not a 4 for sure. Maybe even not even maybe a 3. And so they're gonna get beasted on the glass a fair amount, and that was what really swung this game. And
Yeah,
was what, like
27 Pistons offensive rebounds. 47% of offensive rebounds for Detroit. And that was pretty remarkable. 32 second chance points for Detroit. That was really a killer for them. And Javonte Green has actually given Detroit some decent minutes. They've got Dennis Jenkins as their backup point guard behind Cade. Chaz Lanier is getting a few minutes as well as a backup shooting guard. And they really are so limited at shooting guard, though. Like Duncan Robinson, again, like he had shown a little bit more of this drive game in Miami, but Miami is a team that moves the ball, and Detroit doesn't have the space for him to be driving. He needs to just play out the ball. So he's 2 of 7 from 3. Those were all 7 of his shots. And he just is not able to generate stuff in transition. And then defensively, anytime anyone on Boston, Peyton Pritchard was the guy who really went after him a lot. Anytime anyone in Boston had Duncan Robinson in front of them, it was just an immediate bucket or a foul. I mean, despite the fact that Duncan Robinson has 7 inches on Peyton Pritchard just went through him like tissue paper every single time. So but they have to play him. They don't have anyone else. So I think Detroit, like they've done some pretty interesting things so far this season, and that Bulls loss isn't looking quite as terrible. We'll see as time goes on. And we'll see what they're able to do offensively. But, if they can get 47% offensive rebounds, that helps to make up for your 9 of 34 3-point shooting. And, their defense is pretty rugged outside of Duncan Robinson as well. I don't know why Karis LeVert didn't play in this game.
he was hurt. Yeah, there was an injury. I saw it. I think it was an ankle or something. We'll
have to catch up. I mean, there's a lot of injuries already, which is kind of disappointing. So it's interesting that Ugo Gonzalez is getting the start. Baylor Shireman not really playing much, and I don't know how much Ugo is going to be. He's kind of getting the Keith Bogans a little bit. He had a better game in their second game against the Knicks, but the center situation, like Luka Garza came in. He was in there when going for like kind of no hope blocks, and then Detroit would just get the offensive rebound right behind him. That didn't look very good. They tried to go back to Neemias Queta, but he had 5 fouls, so that made things more difficult. And they don't really have Chris Boucher, Josh Minott didn't do a ton in this one either. So Boston's 0-3. Indiana has fought gamely, but they're 0-3. They got a bunch of injuries. Not a great start for them.
I'll talk briefly. I watched more of Celtics Knicks, and that was a notable game for me just in terms of something that I'd been already thinking about with Boston. And so Jaylen Brown had, I think it was 41 in the Pistons loss. He had 23, wasn't as good in the Knicks game. But the best iterations of the Celtics, and I thought this was pretty present in the Knicks game, were like, they're feisty, they're competitive, they have guys who can play. But the core weakness, and why I'm very happy I picked their under, and I mean, there are plenty of reasons beyond the structural, is that they're weaker in all of the other things. And there are a couple of other teams that are like this too, where so like when they have one of their best players off the floor or anything else, then they're pretty beatable in those minutes. I still like Anthony Simons, but that's not quite enough to do it. They have this pretty weak center rotation overall. And so what happened with the Knicks was I thought the Celtics fought relatively gamely in the starters versus starters minutes. There's some exceptions. But then anytime it was, I've sometimes used the word of like a mixed lineup. So it's a starters and backups. The Knicks were outclassing them pretty consistently in those minutes. And so that led to guys like, I thought, having, even though he didn't have the best like the biggest like stats game, but like having Gershon Yabusele out there, former Celtic, that was pretty useful. Josh Hart made his debut because he didn't play in the opener. That he made a difference, even if he missed a bunch of his shots. Just the energy that he provides. He had 14 rebounds in 19 minutes. And the Celtics just don't really have enough of those type of guys. Now, saying they don't have enough, that's if their goal was to win a lot of games this year. I don't know that is necessarily Brad Stevens' goal. And the other thing that struck me more cleanly in the Knicks game was a bunch of different Celtics are getting the opportunity to do more, like with the ball in their hands and everything like that. And through all, because I've watched bits and pieces of all the Celtics games, I've generally liked that from Derek White. He had a much better game at stretches against the Sixers. Then he had a hot stretch against the Knicks, but then he eventually cooled off pretty hard than I have with Peyton Pritchard. And he did tear up Duncan Robinson against the Pistons. But like Derek White doing it, I think that looks better than Pritchard. Now, both of them being like lead guys at times for a team that matters, it's probably a little bit too much to ask. Stan Van Gundy said on the Knicks broadcast that he thinks Derek White can be an All NBA player this year. I think that's a little bit, as a big Derek White stan, I think that's a little bit rich. But I have liked him doing more overall.
Yeah, I'll second what you said about when they're just so dependent on White and Jaylen Brown at this point, and so they tried to get away with those guys being off the floor a little bit against the Pistons, and they got outscored 12-4 in 3 minutes. And so you're just and Jaylen Brown, he was great in the Pistons game. He had 41 points, got fouled 12 times, and only had 4 turnovers. So, but like, how much of a load is he going to be able to continue? He's had this hamstring issue. He's always had knickknacks. He's coming off surgery in the off season as well. Derek White's a little bit older. He's never been one to play like that many minutes. And at what point are they just going to realize, hey guys, it's not worth it? That was my theory on them. We'll see, obviously, if it holds up or not. San Antonio, I've watched some of all 3 of their games. I watched basically the whole one, at least while it was competitive, against Dallas. The one against New Orleans, I thought was interesting. New Orleans had a much better plan against Victor Wembanyama, where they weren't going to just put their center on him and let him go do whatever he wanted. Now, New Orleans has had to go small. They played Zion at center a lot. They recently signed DeAndre Jordan, actually, although he hasn't played for them yet. But I thought it was a nice comeback by New Orleans, and they really stressed out San Antonio. San Antonio was able to win it in OT. But even with Wembanyama fouling out on a bad foul where Derek Queen got an offensive rebound in overtime, Willie Green for the Pels, he closed with Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears because they were out there when they made their run in the fourth quarter. But it was one of those things, I call this the Lou Williams corollary, because we realized when they got Kawhi and PG that there was no point in playing Lou Williams anymore because he's not great on defense and you're not going to give him the ball. So why is he out there? Like the reason Willie Green did that is because Fears and Queen, who I thought was actually not horrible defensively in this one, admittedly against a team that's not a great shooting. You have Fears out there and Queen, and Fears, yeah, he played well, so you want to reward him, but like he's out there instead of Herb Jones, which was insane. Like Herb Jones, I love Jeremiah Fears. Herb Jones is way better than him, particularly right now, and particularly if you're not going to give
for what
Fears
you
the
need.
ball. If you want to have him close over Jordan Poole, sure, give him the ball, like have him play the role that he's supposed to play. But just like, oh yeah, you've played well, you've earned this, be out there and run up and down. And then his running up and down included one of the key plays of the game where he blew a switch on a split cut action, and then the corner man Sadiq Bey had to come help, and they gave up a wide open 3 in the corner. So it was just like those guys. Queen, I mean, he wasn't really doing much either. He was sort of just out there, but he's a big man, so he's at least doing a little bit more. And the Spurs aren't going to, spread pick and roll, take advantage of his feet. And Zion did a pretty good job of guarding Victor, and I loved the way that they defended Victor on the game-winning shot, where they just ran 2 guys at him, and he ran into the corner and missed an impossible fadeaway, or I should say the game-winning shot at the end of regulation. So, and then Zion, him going up against Victor was great theater. It would have been better theater a few years ago. Like Zion looks healthy, like he's gotten himself in better shape, but it's kind of like for Joel Embiid, is it too late now? Has he gotten religion too late? Because he just doesn't have
Doesn't have
that
the
same
pop.
level of explosive. Like he could do some stuff, he could generate some shots, but he just doesn't feel unstoppable in that way. And he didn't even in that opening game when Memphis totally ran out of guys to guard him. So this isn't just like, oh, he's going up against Victor. No wonder he looks bad. Like it used to be, there was like 3 guys in the league who could stop him on the interior, and now you just it doesn't feel like we have to do anything that special against this dude. He's not an offense unto himself anymore the way he was at his best. So still a good player, like, and he's gotten much better defensively. Like it was semi-effective guarding Victor and getting underneath him, and they've kind of given him license to do these like quick run and jumps because he's so quick accelerating to when a guy tries to go for a spin move or something, he can run up behind him and go for a steal or get in the passing lane. So I think everything has improved about him and his effort level. It's just that he's not that great, even
I mean,
even though he is doing all the stuff now. But what made him truly special now only makes him good.
I was thinking about it in terms of Zion, especially in the game when Zion faced his fellow South Carolinian John Morant, about how, and this is a not even a half baked thought, it's more like a quarter baked thought about how there might be an adjustment that and we as analysts need to make about thinking about players' primes. And like I think back a lot to the Kevin Pelton thing. I think this was originally about Andre Drummond, about how a player's physical prime is basically right when they enter the league, and then that part always gets worse. And then there's you in the early stages, skill development, the mental part of the game that outpaces the physical decline. But that's why, and so that's why guys usually peak in their late 20s. There might be a group of players who are so physically dominant that moving from an 11 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10, that is actually significantly more of a decline for them than the skill development improvement is. And like maybe there are just certain guys where we just need to think about it differently.
Yeah, it's something I've been talking about with Derrick Rose. And certain guys, like Giannis, I thought would actually have a steeper decline than he has. And he's done it. It's not like he's, worked at the jump shot. Like Aaron Gordon, he's staved it off by improving his jump shot and his skill level. Giannis has improved maybe his passing and his dribbling, but he's not as dominating at the basket. And he's gotten a lot worse on defense. I mean, that's people who are like, oh, Giannis is good as ever. Yeah, maybe on offense, but not on defense anymore. But still, like he's maintained his effectiveness for longer than I would have thought. Whereas, Derrick Rose, I always thought was going to be with that guy. Russell Westbrook was another one, of course. And Zion is kind of in that category too, where you felt like maybe this guy is going to peak at 23, 24. And you see like DeAndre Ayton. There's also the category of just big men who are really just sort of like man children, but yet also don't really seem to take fitness or the game that seriously. So that's another category. In San Antonio, Brooklyn today, Cam Thomas. I've said this before that I don't know if I want to say he's one of my least favorite players to analyze. It's not even because of the way he plays. It's more just that, well, the shot's either going to go in or it's not. Like 11 to 25 from the field, 13 to 13 from the line. And that is the one thing about him is he manages for this player type to get fouled a lot. He's got a lot of tricks and he also just takes a lot of difficult shots. 0 assists. And that's pretty incredible for a guard to have zero assists. Now other guys were getting assists giving him the ball as well. And Brooklyn was getting blown out in this one, but then they came back and actually took a brief lead before San Antonio restored order at the end. Victor just continues. He's had he was plus 13, but only 6 of 15 from 2. And I think the Nets are just like, no, we're going to load up on this guy and not. I mean, I thought Dallas, and we'll see. We're going to see them tomorrow. Like they got their first win. We'll talk about them in a second with respect to their game against Washington, where they looked rough. Like Dallas, just that first game, were just shell shocked. They just played so poorly. AD played so poorly. Their defensive plan was so bad. I think like guys getting in foul trouble really hurt them too. But the Brooklyn Nets are like, all right, yeah, Victor, we're gonna just double team you when when you get the ball inside the arc. And he wasn't able to get 7 dunks like he did in that first game. And now he was still totally good, and he shot a few more threes as well. Got to the foul line more. Got fouled 14 times. Had 3 steals and 6 blocks. So he was still dominant, but the Nets weren't going to just let him, and even the Pels were not going to just let him completely embarrass them the way that the Dallas Mavericks did, because their plan was just so bad. We talked about that in the on opening night. And then Dylan Harper looked awesome in this one. 8 of 11 from the field, all of them twos, plus 33, had 20 points, 8 assists. And I mean, the guy, it might not even matter that he can't shoot right now, and he will at least take open threes off the ball. And it was getting a little awkward with Stephon Castle trying to like hang out in the dunker spot a bunch while they gave the ball to Harper. And I actually think that certainly offensively, Dylan Harper, like Castle, they need for his defense. Like he's definitely very good there. But I think Harper is better than Castle offensively already, because he's just such a natural point guard. Castle, he's surprised in that area. His ball handling is good, better than I thought it would be. And maybe he can get by as a point guard dribbling, and he's throwing some decent passes. But Dylan Harper, he is a natural point guard. And he also is more dominating getting to the basket. He's relentless in transition. He's going to attack off of 1 or 2 feet, finish right or left, go right through guys. I thought this was just it's against the Nets, but it was a really impressive performance. Also, Danny, there is a box score curiosity that has continued with the Nets. Would you like to take a look at the box score and guess what I'm going to say here?
No block shots?
No, this is one player in particular who we have been focused on this already.
Yegor Droman? I don't know.
That is correct.
Oh, all of his shots are threes.
He has not taken a 2 yet this season. And he's taking I think he's taken over 23s now. Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
He has taken 16 shots, 16 of them threes.
And he actually was hitting them up until this game when he was 1 of 5. But that's all I got on this one. I thought Jalen Wilson came in and had a nice performance, just like pressuring up. That's something that the Nets will do, at least, is try to speed up the opposition at least a little bit. Let's talk about this Washington-Dallas game. Both of us watched the second half of it, and Washington was impressive. The Mavs decidedly were not.
Both of those things are true. And I thought, I'll start with the positive. I thought this was a very impressive game for Keyshawn George. And George was somebody who intrigued me in draft film, not for the on-ball stuff that he did at Miami, but for kind of the way his game could evolve in the NBA. And the guy that I invoked with him was Cam Johnson. And the idea that he could shoot it, but then what George has added starting at the later part of his rookie year and continued is the shot, 7 of 9 from 3 in this game, 11 of 15 from the field on his way to 34 points, is that he's been so disruptive defensively. And the Dallas Mavericks they're a smorgasbord for players who are disruptive defensively right now, considering their spacing and the limited ball handling they have. And I thought that Keyshawn George did a nice job there. I thought that at different times, Alex Sarr did a good job. And overall in the game, Dallas turned it over 21 times. 11 of those were live ball, and they also got their shot blocked 8 times. And so, but I thought that Keyshawn George being the best player on the floor was exhilarating, honestly, just because you want to see one of the whiz kids. Like, I was a big Bub Carrington guy. He hasn't quite done it yet, though there's still lots of time for a young guard. But Keyshawn George was great.
Yeah, this is why you get 3 first-round draft picks in a year. Oh, who are they going to get with 24? Well, you might get someone like this guy. And 34 points, 7 of 9 from 3. His 3 looks very good. He hit one off a movement that was pretty deep. He had one where he actually played some point guard on the second unit, interestingly, next to Trey Johnson. It's kind of interesting that they start Bub Carrington, Chris Middleton, and CJ McCollum, and then they are playing a second unit without any of those guys, and Keyshawn George was the point guard, and he was pretty effective. He did get pressured up a couple of times, so he had 5 turnovers, but so his 3 looked great. and he just looks like a little more athletic, a little bouncier, a little stronger. He really, we've we're so concerned. I mean, I'm not really concerned because they're not trying to win that hard this year, but they don't have a power forward on the roster, so he basically plays power forward for them defensively. He makes plays. He had 3
Mhm.
blocks, 2 steals, 9 defensive rebounds, 4 assists, and just guys feel him around the basket as well. He'll be someone that, when we have enough data to look at the rim protection numbers, I'll be interested to see how he rates because he's just around the rim. And I even noticed this a little bit in their first game, is making some plays there. So that was really exciting. And he's able to show enough athleticism to get to the rim as well. And I thought Sarr was the other guy who stood out to me just in terms of being a little bit more athletic, a little more sure with the ball. He's not a deer in the headlights anymore. He looks like close to a real center out there in terms of his strength and athleticism, where he was just getting manhandled. His finishing on non-dunks has improved as well. He had a couple of nice plays getting to the basket off of slips, and only played 25 minutes, but I thought it was much more difficult for Dallas when he was out there defensively. Trey Johnson continues to look pretty good too. He had 17 points. Like his shot's going to go in. He hasn't been atrocious on the defensive end so far either. So he's
Well,
getting out there, and even Chris Middleton didn't shoot it great, but he's moving relatively well. And CJ McCollum, on the other hand, has not had a good start to the season. To me, I think while New Orleans has been pilloried for that McCollum for Poole swap, they also did get Sadiq Bey. They got off of Kelly Olynyk, who's not even playing yet for after coming off a heel surgery. And Jordan Poole, I think I feel pretty comfortable saying that Jordan Poole is better than CJ McCollum right now. That could change, but certainly from what we've seen this year and the way both guys are moving, that's the case.
the Wizards,
Dallas. Yeah,
two
sorry.
more things on the Wizards.
Okay.
So I think they're a good place to talk about two dynamics of the season so far, which is kind of part of the point of this podcast. That they're a good part of it. So one of them is I call it the staggered introduction, and so the San Antonio is another fantastic example of this, where they've had significant players out, and that has allowed other players to kind of get different opportunities. So with the Spurs, De'Aaron Fox hasn't played yet, and then Harper missed the first game. So that's allowed some different guy. Harper got to play more, got to have the ball in his hands a little bit more because of that. For the Wizards, that's no Bilal Coulibaly. And that's not to say in any of these cases that the player who's out is bad, or this is, to use Bill Simmons' term, a Ewing theory situation. It shuffles the deck a little bit. It forces the coaches to think about their rotations, to think about who's getting the ball a little bit differently. And I thought that Keyshawn George, maybe he would have done this because of how he was playing in camp or anything like that. But I thought that, having Bilal Coulibaly out might have made some of these things a little bit easier for the Wizards in the short term.
So Dallas, we won't talk about it as much from their perspective because we're going to talk about their game tomorrow against OKC that we're doing for the strategy stream, which is at 5:30 Pacific tomorrow. So please join us for that on the NBA app if you're an NBA League Pass subscriber. And we're really looking forward to doing that game. Dallas did do the first night of this is on Friday, this Washington game. Then they had the first night of a back-to-back today and did win. D'Angelo Russell played a really nice game. He only played 9 minutes off the bench. He's not starting. We thought he would start in the absence of Kyrie. That wasn't happening. And then Ryan Nembhard actually was playing more than him in the second half. Jason Kidd was just really searching by the end of this. PJ Washington played 39 minutes. They even went to PJ Washington at center with both Davis and Derek Lively off the floor. Lively was pretty ineffective in this one too. He hasn't looked great, and they tried even Cooper Flag at the 4 a little bit. I hope that they'll continue to explore that a little bit more. We'll see. Dallas, like they're gonna play better than this, but this is one where this is a group that's supposed to be dominating inside. They're the ones getting 8 shots blocked by. I mean, Alex Sarr and Keyshawn George are played well in this game, but also like going up against Anthony Davis and Derek Lively and Cooper Flag and PJ Washington, you would hope that Dallas would dominate inside. Just not the case at all. So we'll have more on Dallas. We obviously talked about them quite a bit in their first game too, so don't need to
Well,
get into them.
One
as
thing I'll
much right now.
mention is that my favorite play from Cooper Flag was on defense. There was a play where he stuck pretty well with Bub Carrington and then got him at the rim for a block. It's like that's the type of stuff that we could see from Cooper Flag, and you could see more of that. I mentioned him guarding a small, but you actually see more of that when he's playing the four, just because he's such a natural help defender. And so I really hope we get to see more of that than we have so far.
Wanted to touch briefly on Memphis and Indiana just because Cedric Howard was awesome. And he did it through 6 of 6 3-point shooting. He's had a couple of nice games now. And his shot, he's not like a great movement shooter yet. He had a couple of his 6 out of 6 that were on the move. One was just coming off a screen, but it wasn't the quickest release. He had time to get his feet set, but still encouraging. Then the other one, he drove left at Jarris Walker, who he had some nice moves against, knocked Walker backward and then dribbled back beyond the 3-point line and hit a three. But I believe in his shot being totally at least solid at this point in time. And Coward was plus 36 off the bench, 27 points, and only 3 out of 7 from 2, but the 6 of 6 from 3. And so, yeah, I guess maybe he won't shoot 72% from 2 like he did 2 years ago in college. But he's not a nuclear leaper, but he does have that crazy 7'2" wingspan. Like, there's one alley-oop where one of the absolute best athletes would have crushed it, but he had to lay it in. But he still is just big enough and strong enough and has long enough arms that he can be effective going to the basket, has some ball handling ability. So this was a Pacers team that was kind of shell-shocked a little bit. They got blown out. They just have so many injuries. They're getting even more. They started James Wiseman at center in this one. Wiseman, shockingly enough, was negative 15 in 20 minutes. So they are, their backup point guard. They went with Ray J. Dennis in this one. So they competed pretty gamely against Minnesota, though Anthony Edwards was out today. So they're now 0-3. But I thought Coward has had a couple of nice games. Like this rookie class is very intriguing, and he certainly is on that list so far.
Another game from the weekend that I wanted to talk about is Bucks Raptors, and I thought that kind of the focal point that I want to use in this is it a decision that I disagreed with. It was funny because I was watching on the Raptors broadcast and they agreed with it. I disagreed with it. That Darko Rakovic made the decision to pull Scotty Barnes early in the first and third, and then bring him back early in the second and fourth. And what that did was it separated Scotty Barnes from Giannis Antetokounmpo. And there is merit to that theory. And basically that allows Scotty Barnes to do more initiation on the second unit. That allows him to not have to spend all of his defensive time dealing with Giannis, especially if he's running the show. But the reason why I disagreed with it was that I thought Scotty Barnes did by far the best job of any of the Raptors forwards defending Giannis. And so the idea basically being what part of what you're trying to do is to try to maximize Scotty Barnes, especially on the offensive end, but you're also trying to limit the other team's best player. And so Giannis absolutely ran roughshod. He ran roughshod overall, but he really ran roughshod over the Raptors in the non-Scotty Barnes minutes. And so I thought that, because Jakob Poeltl's really their only true center in the rotation. Jonathan Bobo, who isn't a center, only played 4 minutes. And Mamu played a little bit against his former team. I thought he did some stuff. Of course, he battled Giannis in practice a fair amount over those years. But what happened is, so you pull Scotty Barnes, and then it's, you're having guys like Brandon Ingram and Mamu trying to slow him down, or RJ Barrett. It's like, no, they had Ochai Agbaji on Giannis for a little bit of time. That did not go particularly well. And so I thought it was a fascinating coach decision that I just disagreed with. It ended up being, statistically I was right. But I thought watching it on the floor, I was right as well.
Yeah, Giannis has just been fantastic so far this season. They gamely fought against the Cavs and took it down to the end today, but lost that one.
But
yeah, Brandon, what did you think of Brandon Ingram?
He looked good.
He had 29.
Ingram, I thought that he, offensively, but when he had to guard Giannis, it didn't go well. But that's surprise. No. But I thought that Ingram, offensively, he's moving better. He's getting to his spots. And I mean, I've never loved Ingram's stylings, and he gets to a lot of tough twos, but in this game, he was making them. But his passing has been, I think I've grown in appreciation. He's gotten better, and he can do that at times. I didn't think this was his best passing performance. But no, I thought the Bucks one of my takeaways from this game, especially the Raptors went on a run in, I believe it was the early second, and I'm just like, holy crap! The Raptors are crushing the Bucks because the Bucks only have like 3 credible defensive players in their entire rotation right now. I mean, Amir Coffey, that's why he's in the game when he's in the game, but he only played 3 minutes. And then Giannis has gotten worse than he was, and Miles Turner. And Miles Turner, I thought, was really disruptive, and he made life hard on Ingram. He made life hard on a number of different Raptors at different times. But that, like, so those minutes in particular, that was when I thought Ingram looked best. There was no one on the Bucks who could even come close to defending him.
Yeah, he will definitely beat up bad defense pretty badly. I think the Bucks against point guards are okay, but yeah, they just don't have anyone with the size to deal with Ingram. But as you noted, the Raptors did not have anyone other than Scotty Barnes with the size to deal with Giannis. And yeah, Giannis scoring 31 points and having 20 rebounds and 7 assists and going 11 of 14 from the field. That is probably also hit both of his threes. Like, that's a pretty good formula to win on a lot of nights in this Eastern Conference.
By the way, the Bucks, so they're another team where their best is very good, but everything else is a lot worse. They outscored the Raptors by 18 points in the 38 minutes that Giannis played. The Raptors outscored the Bucks by 12 points in the 10 minutes that Giannis sat.
Well, and the Raptors bench also, I think they're like Sandro Mamukelashvili, and I mean, that's probably part of why they felt like they had to stagger Barnes around, is because Mamukelashvili needs some help. And if you're, so you kind of got to stagger Barnes and Jakob Poeltl, because those are their only 2 interior defenders. Jonathan Mobo didn't do much in this one, and then they don't even really have any power forwards coming off the bench, and they're missing Colin Murray-Boyles with this forearm injury that we haven't heard really anything about yet, and they're still missing Jacoby Walter as well. And the Raptors, they dominated so much against Atlanta in transition. The Bucks kept them out of transition pretty well, while also getting 38% offensive rebounds themselves, including 7 from Giannis. And they weren't all on his own missed shots, because he only missed 3 shots.
Correct. One other big thing for the Bucks in this one, I thought this was a very nice performance in favor of Cole Anthony being a credible backup point guard. He's had a really rough go of it with the Orlando Magic, but he was getting downhill. He was creating advantages. He hit a couple of threes, had 7 assists in 27 minutes. And sometimes it's players need to improve. Point guards oftentimes take forever. You know, this is going to be, I believe, his age 25 season, but also maybe it's being not being in the Amway/Kia gym, not having the curse on you. Maybe that's going to help him out a little bit too.
Let's talk about the Utah Jazz. They had a heartbreaking loss in Sacramento, and I thought, again, that they probably should have won, that they were playing pretty well in. Didn't have a ton to say on this one, though. It was Domantas Sabonis getting an offensive rebound for the winning points, and then Dennis Schroeder locked up Keontae George in the last 5 seconds. George never really was able to make any sort of a move towards the basket and had to fire up a really difficult shot. It wasn't much of a play. So that Malik Monk was pretty useful throughout the game, but then Russell Westbrook actually closed it out. Russell Westbrook committed just another one of these inexcusable mistakes for a veteran, where he lane violated, giving Utah an extra shot on a missed free throw in the last minute. That was a key play, but Sabonis bailed him out. He's back from the hamstring. Kings lost to the Lakers without Luka Doncic today, but I did go back and
Sorry, as Austin Reeves scored 51 because no Luka, no LeBron.
And no defense.
Yeah, I have some more. So do you want to talk more about the Jazz, or do you want my thoughts on this game? We can go either direction.
Oh, yeah, please. You watched more of it than me, it would seem.
I did, and I thought that the Kings... So, first of all, I have the Kings over... They might be the team that pisses me off the most to watch in the league, because their defense is just so bad. And it's some of that is structural, just they don't have good players who play defense, especially with Keegan Murray out. But the other frustrating part of it is that the Kings' offense looks so much better when it's not just their starting five, because that group, the ball, it gets really stagnant. So they're starting Schroeder, Levine, DeRozan, Sabonis, and then the fifth is shuffled around a little bit. It was Isaac Jones in the Jazz game, and they at times, like, they've done Charic, they've done a few other things. But like then Malik Monk comes in the game, and all of a sudden there's a little bit of player movement, there's a little bit of ball movement, and things look a lot better because DeRozan and Levine just, especially in the half court, they have things they like to do. Sabonis has things he likes to do, and that just occupies pretty much all their possessions. And so they're boring on offense, they're terrible on defense, and it's not the most fun thing to watch. But I think that for me, the big takeaway, and this can tie in with the discussion of the Jazz. So I brought up that there were two through lines for me with the Wizards. I forgot to say the second one, and it's because it's also good with the Jazz, which is the jump from first year to second year. A lot of times, what that is going from being like terrible or like actively negative to not being actively negative. And I thought that made a huge difference for the Jazz basically every time I've watched them. Like, you've seen guys like Keontae George that wasn't, he's been in the league a little bit longer, but like Keontae George just like seems like he's a little bit, not a lot more buttoned up, but a little bit more buttoned up. And
I would say a lot more, actually. I think he
okay,
looks very in control. I'll talk about him more
yeah,
in
he
the
had some bad
game
turnovers in
against.
in the Kings game. Maybe that's what I
Okay,
could
yeah,
say.
I didn't see that as much, but I thought he just his handle looks a little bit better, and he's just not taking as many bad shots, and his defense looked better to me. And this Clippers game was, kind of a funhouse mirror of a game, as I'll get to. But uh, yeah, I mean, it's maybe it's a little, maybe it's a lot, but certainly he's looked like a reasonable starting point guard who's not just killing you out there so far.
Yeah, and steps forward for Bryce Sensabaugh, who hit some shots against the Kings, and they got a little bit. The Taylor Hendricks wasn't as good as he was in some of the earlier stuff that I'd seen from him, but he was out there, and they're still starting this Filipowski, Markkanen, Kessler trio. I actually like, it was so funny for both of these teams that I thought they looked a lot better when it wasn't their starting five out there, because for the Jazz, like, that allowed them to get a little bit more from Sensabaugh, who's been still hitting stuff, and also just like more spacing, because Filipowski can take some threes, but you don't have to like defend him in some of the same ways, particularly when he's you're like your third option offensively. So I thought that the Jazz, like, this was part of why we both picked their over, was just that they're going to be a more professional version, even if their roster is pretty similar. And I think that's largely been the case so far.
Yeah, and Larry Markkinen looks really good. He was dominant in the first quarter of that Clippers game, and he had 33 in this one. That's part of why Russell Westbrook closed, because that's who Doug Christie thought was the best guy to guard him. And he might have been right, honestly, because the Kings had nobody to do that. Jazz also just completely destroyed them on the offensive glass, but then they gave a bunch of it back through turnovers. So despite Utah having 35% offensive rebounds and the Kings 11%, they only had 4 more true shots than Sacramento in this game. And unless you have anything else, I can move on to Clippers Utah, which was 43-19 after the first quarter. And the Clippers just did not show up in this game. And I think they've showed up in their last 2 games. They're now 2-1. But it was just, they came out thinking that this was just, they're going to kick the shit out of Utah, who I don't know if you heard has an 18.5 over under, and just in every possible respect of the game, they were dominated. Right? The Jazz had 7 steals in the first. Keontae George was jumping the passing lanes. The Clippers just were not setting good screens. They're throwing away. Bradley Beal looked like an absolute corpse out there most of the way. Kawhi Leonard was just jogging back on defense. The big thing that stuck out was that they're just giving up dunks and layups off of set plays in the half court, where it was just pretty much wide pin down. Walker Kessler guarded by Ivica Zubac and Lauri Markkanen guarded by Kawhi Leonard. They would set a wide pin down for Markkanen, and he would either curl to the basket, Kessler would slip out, Markkanen would go back door, or they would get into more like an open side pick and roll look out of that, and nobody was tilting over from the Clippers. Zubats was getting totally out of position. Kawhi couldn't get through the screen. They weren't communicating, and they were just giving up great looks over and over again against this one set, essentially. And Jeff Van Gundy, I'm sure, is going to have to print a whole new set of T-shirts about what the Jazz did to them on this wide pin down in the first quarter. But it was, and Bradley Beal had just threw it away on an inbounds to Keontae George. James Harden was, of course, not getting back on defense, and they were putting Harden in a position where he had to be the low man in some of these plays. And the Jazz just pressured up a lot. They use Yusuf Nurkic, who coming off the bench can kind of do his whole reaching in, handsy, steals things, because if he gets in foul trouble, who cares? And he looked good there. Keontae George looked pretty good too, but it was, and Kessler ended up with 24 points on 7 of 7 from the field in that game. It was just a total beatdown in a way that the Clippers, like even like Chris Dunn, was getting beat off the dribble by Walter Clayton Jr. for a layup. Like everything that the Clippers were just supposed to be awesome at this year just looked horrible. it was incredible, and the Jazz played great, but it was yeah, it was. I think it's an aberration for the Clippers, but also an indication you can't just roll the balls out against the Jazz.
And I saw the other side of the Clippers coin because I watched
Yeah.
their pretty dominating win over the Phoenix Suns. And to me, the big story of that game was just the overwhelming quality of the Clippers' depth. And so in the competitive port, like so their bench group in that game, like in the first half, was Chris Paul, Nico Batum, John Collins, Brook Lopez, and Chris Dunn. Like there are a lot of guys not only who have started games in their group, but like who could start games now in that group. And then the Suns are rolling out Royce O'Neal, who I thought played well in the first half, Nigel Hayes, Colin Gillespie, like guys who just aren't nearly that good. Mark Williams was completely outmatched by the combination of Zubats and Brook Lopez, which is just a nasty center rotation. Like, and guys that are big and strong that Mark Williams can't bully at all. And I thought that the Clippers, they looked really good. And at first I was fixated on the depth. And then I'm like, oh shit, James Harden has 26 points in the first half. He had a big 4 to end the second quarter. But Harden, he isn't that dominating scorer anymore. You brought that up early in the pod in the Sixers section. That's completely true. But he was a big part of this 27-5 run when the Clippers basically took control of the game. He ended up 5 for 7 from 3. Didn't do a lot in the second half, but the Clippers didn't need anyone to do a lot in the second half. They pushed the lead even further in the third quarter, and then it was over at that point. And so I thought that it wasn't Kawhi Leonard dominating. I thought that Derek Jones Jr. was 3 of 3 on threes.
Well, I mean, early. Kawhi had pretty good stats in this one.
Yeah, he had good stats. Like he 27 points on 21 shots, 23 shooting possessions. And he was disruptive defensively. The Suns don't really have forwards in that sort of a sense. Like there was this bizarre stretch where Dillon Brooks was just taking a ton of shots, and some of them actually went in. He was 5 of 10 from 3, but it was never like sustainable, reliable offense. So Kawhi played well. But I thought Harden was.
And in Dillon Brooks' defense, they're starting Grayson Allen, Ryan Dunn, Dillon Brooks, Oso Guidara, Devin Booker. Like he actually is the second best creator on this team now.
It's wild. He is, and I thought Booker, 18 points on 5 of 10 from the field, though he played fewer minutes because they were getting crushed, so he didn't have to. I thought that individually he played fine. Like he wasn't the reason that they got whooped in this game, but it is a reminder of how him as the sole good player, that puts a ceiling on your team, and it's part of why the Suns, the best case scenario for the Suns, wasn't particularly inspiring for me this year.
Yeah, and the Clippers also got 5 of 5 3-point shooting from Derek Jones Jr. And were 16 to 29. Suns were not going to compete with that.
Well, the Suns also made 16 threes. They just did it on 47 attempts instead of 29.
All right, well, that will do it for this evening. That was a good catch-up, though. We did a lot of work over the weekend, and tomorrow, please join us again on the strategy stream. If you want to see every Hollinger and Duncan, you want to see every Duncan and Leroux on Dunc'd on Prime, preseason 25 is that code to get 35% off a year membership. Way, way less expensive than doing it monthly, so I highly recommend you take advantage of that. It'll be out for a couple more days, so please get to that and give us a shot for your business. We appreciate it. Talk to y'all next time.